All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Aaron Blumberg, Swiftland's Continuing Education Coordinator, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Digital Library Collaborations and Partnerships. We have a wonderful learning opportunity ready for you this morning with Katie McCormick. Katie McCormick is the Associate Dean of Libraries for Special Collections and Archives at the Florida State University. In this capacity, she manages the rare book, manuscript, and archival collections of FSU, as well as cataloging and the Digital Library Center. She is a member of the Florida DPLA Service Hub Planning Group. She has served as the co-chair of the Florida Virtual Campus Digital Initiatives Actions Plan Steering Committee, Digital Initiatives Subcommittee, and as a member of the Florida Statewide Digital Action Plan Steering Committee. She previously served on the advisory board for North Carolina Exploring Cultural Heritage Online. Her professional interests include community engagement, copyright and intellectual property, digital access, preservation, audiovisual archiving, and teaching. She holds an MLIS from Simmons College and a master's in English with a focus in Irish literature and culture from Boston College. Please welcome Katie and enjoy her webinar this morning. Katie?
Thank you for that nice introduction, Aaron. I appreciate everyone being here. I know it's been a crazy couple of weeks here in the state of Florida, and we've had to reschedule this webinar a couple of times. I'd also like to thank our sign language interpreter, Deb McLean, for being here and for getting my slides so very late. Hopefully, if there are any terminology issues as we go through this, Deb is a great interpreter. I can guarantee you it's my fault for not getting the language to her previously. So thanks, Deb. So welcome this morning. Today we're going to talk about digital library collaborations and partnerships, and focus really on a set of goals around understanding the Digital Public Library of America, which is currently one of I think one of the most major and national and international efforts at digital library collaboration and helping to create an entirely new vision for partnerships in digital libraries across the United States. We'll look at what is the Digital Public Library to help build an understanding both of how it can be used and what the benefits of participating are. We'll also review the development of the Sunshine State Digital Network, which is Florida's DPLA hub, newly minted. We'll talk more about that. And we'll talk also about how to prepare your organizations and institutions to participate in large collaborative efforts like the Sunshine State Digital Network and DPLA. Well, we should have time for some questions at the end. And we'll just get started. So you may be a little familiar with the Digital Public Library of America already. It is, in case you're not, it is a free national digital library providing access to millions of materials from across libraries, archives, and museums around the United States. The goal is to bring together the riches of America's libraries, archives, and museums and to make them freely available to the world. Really focusing on cultural heritage content at this time. And being able to connect and expose people to the rich digitized cultural heritage that exists around the United States. It's a portal. It serves as an access point currently to over 17 million items. This number is increasing. This is an old screenshot. 2 million more items have been added since this. Photos, manuscript materials, letters, books, audio collections, oral histories, moving images, and much more content from libraries, archives, and museums of all shapes, sizes, and missions around the United States. Users can browse the DPLA's collections through timeline applications, through a map. They can explore using keyword searches for topics and formats. There's also digital exhibitions that have been curated by DPLA's content partners and staff, and all of these applications and entry portals to the research are constantly growing and evolving. There's always somebody working on how people can get at DPLA material. You can explore objects covered through time. The material connected through DPLA covers hundreds of years of cultural heritage. You can browse by century, decade, by year, using the timeline search feature. You could also browse by place. If you were curious to know what resources DPLA has from or related to your home state, if you did a search for Florida, you would find material popped up from all over the country. You may want to look at your college town, the city where your parents were born, a city that you're visiting, a place that you've had an interest in. You can use the Browse by Place feature just to find out where things are related to that material. In the exhibitions, DPLA and its partners have curated a series of virtual exhibits which highlight specific themes such as activism in the United States, prohibition, the Transcontinental Railroad, the World War II home front, industries in Montana, a whole variety of things. These curated exhibits include full images, documents, and other media from across DPLA's collections that really pull those materials together around special topics. This is particularly useful, I think, in connecting with students and users who may be working on projects around specific topics. The primary source sets, which are even more deeply curated groups of materials, they're designed to help students develop critical thinking skills through the exploration of topics in history, literature, and culture by engaging in digitized primary resources. Drawing from online materials from across the partners within the DPLA, these sets of letters, photographs, posters, oral histories, video clips, sheet music, and more include topic guides, 10 to 15 primary sources, links to related resources, and a teaching guide, and can be used by students or by teachers in classrooms to help engage students with primary resource materials around these particular topic areas. These sets were created and reviewed by teachers on DPLA's Education Advisory Committee. So I think that's another really nice thing about this educational material is that these are materials curated and created by teachers for teachers in the classroom. And again, this is another area that is consistently under development as new material becomes available and added. DPLA also, in the last 12 months, has engaged in a broad-based ebook project. Open eBooks is an application containing thousands of popular and award-winning titles that are free for kids from in-need communities. DPLA has partnered on the Open eBooks initiative with the New York Public Library First Book and educational technology company Clever with content support from Baker and Taylor. This material is coming from different spaces than a lot of the other cultural heritage material. But again, I think when we're looking at the Digital Public Library of America as an ever-growing sort of full-stop portal to a rich variety of information, it's important to point out this ebook element to the whole thing. They're working to facilitate ongoing and in-depth discussions about ebooks. It hasn't been a focus of their work, but they do look to expand ebook content within the DPLA as we go forward. So that's a big overview of just the different resources and materials available in the Digital Public Library of America and ways through which students, community members, librarians, and others might be able to engage in the content. But where does the content come from? The content comes from what we call content and service hubs. The Digital Public Library of America is based on a hub-based structure. This program is designed to be a national network. The goal is that each of the 50 states in the United States will have a central service hub or a content hub that will allow institutional partners and organizations throughout those states to have someone within their home state to work with, to aggregate metadata, and to feed metadata into the Digital Public Library of America portal. The DPLA partners with these state and regional aggregators and large digital libraries to bring together the content from across the U.S. I think it's important to note the Digital Public Library of America is not really a digital library in, I think, sort of the traditional sense that we all might think of it, or how we might create our own institutional digital library. They are not actually hosting any content. They're not operating a digital asset management system which holds all of this digitized content. They are aggregating metadata records so that the information that describes each digitized item, such as its creator, date, place, and so forth. That's the information that's pulled into the Digital Public Library of America, helping it to function as a broad and connectable portal for information that then users can get back out to where that material may be locally hosted. Each record in the DPLA links to the original object of the content provider's website. It's not all held exclusively within DPLA. This is, I think, an advantage in that it allows one for sort of an ever-increasing connectedness across the United States of newly available digital content, while also providing home institutions sort of path for people to get back to those local digital libraries and to know where any individual object has come originally from and how to connect it even to more material. So what is the difference then between a service and a content hub when we talk about these two types of hubs? A content hub are typically large digital libraries, digital museums, or digital archives, repositories that contain or maintain a one-to-one relationship with DPLA. So these are organizations who are providing typically access to more than 150,000 unique records for digitized materials directly to DPLA in aggregation. They're not necessarily working with another type of organization. So organizations like the Smithsonian, the National Archives, the Biodiversity Heritage Library, the Getty Trust, the Hathi Trust, Harvard University Libraries, the New York Public Library, Art Store. These are all organizations where their digital libraries in and of themselves maintain and hold so much content that it makes sense to feed that content directly into the DPLA. More commonly across the states is that you look at the development of service hubs. So service hubs are state or regional digital libraries that work together to aggregate information from digital content from those libraries, archives, and museums within a given state or region. The regional hubs like Mountain West Digital Library, the portal for Texas history, to some extent the Empire State Digital Network, while they're statewide, they create this kind of broad-based regional points where multiple organizations can participate. The North Carolina Digital Heritage Center, the Kentucky Digital Library, and the work that we've been doing here in the state of Florida with the Sunshine State Digital Network will provide service to regional partners to aggregate, to pull in the metadata from existing digital collections, to provide training, metadata assistance, and to develop a suite of services that will allow organizations across the state of Florida and allow organizations across other states to participate fully in the Digital Public Library of America. So to kind of help visualize this concept, our partners at DPLA, they like to talk about this in the language of ponds, lakes, and oceans. So when we think about the service hub relationship, you might imagine that your institution, a small local historical society, a public library, a college or university library, a small museum, that's you might imagine that those entities as ponds, that they contain unique, valuable cultural content. They are um, smaller than lakes and oceans. They're looking to send their content through tributaries to larger configurations like lakes, so ponds feeding into lakes, and the lakes are the DPLA service hubs. These are the organizations who aggregate metadata from those smaller cultural heritage institutions across the state or region, who pull that rich content into the system, who help standardize the metadata so that when the information then passes into the big wide ocean of the Digital Public Library of America, that content is connectable in standardized ways across the system. So it's sort of this process of feeding information through a kind of ecosystem of a digital library ecosystem that takes what sometimes can be isolated content in individual digital asset management systems or on websites, pulls that into a larger arena, helps standardize it, and then feeds that into the biggest possible system, thereby allowing for a greater connectedness, a broader searchability, and the ability to, I think, of users from around the world to sometimes find information that otherwise they may not have come across, that Google searches don't always retrieve relevant digital content for users. And through a platform like DPLA, we have a single stop sort of search capability to find not just what might say exist in digital collections in the state of Florida, but how those digital collections might relate to things that are elsewhere across the United States. And I'll pause for a second. I see Susan says in the chat that she has lost the slides. Aaron, I'm not sure if there's a technical issue there, but they're still appearing for me. Is anyone else having that issue? Just pausing for a moment in case no one can see what I'm doing. Yes, so we are on a slide called a platform to build upon. So I think one of the powers of the Digital Public Library of America and participating in a large collaborative effort like the DPLA, in part, as I've been talking about, is that ability to connect a broader range of people to important digitized cultural heritage objects. Finding audiences and users that we may not have otherwise known were out there for us. I think as librarians, as educators, the sort of eternal power of being with a student who finds material that you didn't even know you had, that they certainly didn't know, that expands their education and a project that they're doing, is probably one of the most powerful experiences we can have as librarians and educators. As the Digital Public Library has been designed and developed, they've been very conscious about creating a portal that can also be built upon. So in addition to serving as a content portal for students and teachers and scholars and community members across our country, the DPLA is also a powerful platform that helps to enable new and transformative uses for our digitized cultural heritage. With an application programming interface, API, and maximally open data, the DPLA can be used by software developers, researchers, and others to create novel environments for learning, tools for discovery, and engaging apps. So the idea, sort of fundamental idea behind DPLA is not only to provide access to aggregated content, but to help put that content or information, to help put that information into an environment through which people can do things, to use and reuse material as they wish in projects, in research, and creative endeavors some of us haven't even imagined yet. Through the API, there are access to millions of items really for any purpose. Developers from all walks of life can build tools, programs, widgets, plugins, all kinds of interesting and creative elements. If you're unfamiliar with the full power of an API, I myself am not a technologist. I think of an API as a set of routines and protocols and digital tools for building application software. The API is software to software interface, not really a user interface element. With APIs, and that DPLA operates on APIs, applications can then talk to each other without really any user knowledge or intervention. A good API makes it easy for a developer to create an application that makes use of a particular set or sets of data by providing all the building blocks needed to integrate that information into her or his own design. So as an example, software companies may release an API to the public so that other software developers can design products that are powered by its service. So this is where the apps on our iPhone and in our Android devices, this is where they come from, and what they function on is this API. The DPLA app library contains a handful of applications that have been built by independent developers interested in seeing what cultural heritage data can look like in new and interesting contexts. These developers are have sometimes been highly experienced computer programmers. I know minimally experienced faculty and students have also been able to develop applications that enhance, again, both the use and discoverability. So for instance, there's a color browse app. This application was developed by independent programmers, and it allows you to search or browse across the Digital Public Library of America content based on color you might need. So here we have what's everything with dark red. Another example is an app that was developed to look at content state by state, county by county. So you could go in to see, I was looking at this actually last night. Currently, Leon County is not represented in the state by state, county by county element, but there is material from Jefferson County, Madison County, and this is all without the Florida records actually being a part of the set. So it's sort of an interesting way. And again, this is all completely independently developed. These are people who saw a need, who had a desire to look at this data and information in different kinds of ways, were able to use the API and data made available by the Digital Public Library of America to create new tools. The Culture Collage is a simple tool that lets you search DPLA's image archives and view the results in a stream of images. You just keep scrolling to find more. Clicking on an image saves it in a scrapbook without losing your position in the data stream, so you can create your own collages from material within the Digital Public Library of America. The data within DPLA is free. All DPLA data is available for download in zipped files. You could work with your own programmers. You could work with students to develop different applications that would allow for different needs and services in browsability or application development. This data includes standard DPLA fields as well as the complete metadata record as received from the partner institutions. All the data brought into DPLA from its partners is normalized to the DPLA metadata application profile. It's enriched with useful information. Geospatial data is sometimes added. GeoNames, for instance, is a geographical database containing millions of unique geographical names corresponding to discrete places on the globe. This kind of data makes, say, the county by county, state by state search possible. Through enrichment like this, within the data, DPLA and its partners can make cultural heritage data more useful and relevant to its users. So with more content and work across the service hubs and providing information to partners, adding material through the service hubs, we can work together to find ways to enrich metadata to make our materials even more connectable in interesting ways and usable by a broad range of users. The Digital Public Library is committed to open access. For most of our history, the ability to access materials for free through public libraries has been a central part of our culture. It's helped to produce generations of avid readers, a knowledgeable and engaged citizenry. The Digital Public Library of America is working towards working to ensure that this critical open intellectual landscape remains vibrant and broad in the face of increasingly restrictive digital options. We know that as librarians, our organizations pay a good deal for access to digitized content. DPLA is an effort to provide as much of that content as possible for free and in the open to the public. It's sort of secondary mission or maybe driving mission is to connect people to digitized cultural heritage content that they may not have known existed, that without something like the Digital Public Library of America would be relatively undiscoverable or overshadowed by the paid-for services that exist in our organizations, and to again allow sort of to multiply openly accessible materials to strengthen the public option that libraries represent in their communities, while operating fully within copyright law, being able to develop and create alternate models that can help creatively expand our access to important cultural heritage. So the fact that the metadata is under a CC0 open license in Creative Commons, that everything, all the metadata aggregated by DPLA is open, the development of this apps, that this is all about a commitment to broad open access to material. DPLA partners with institutions like Creative Commons, Unglue.it, History Harvest, others, to help advocate for a broad and deep open access ecology. Creative Commons is a nonprofit that enables sharing and use of creativity and knowledge through legal tools, through free legal tools, and providing easy to use copyright licenses for organizations as a way to give standardized information on public permissions on how material might be shared or used in creative work. Unglue It can be thought of as a kind of Kickstarter for books. Through this model, publishers or authors post their books and provide a dollar figure at which they'll release an open access e-copy. People contribute money to get the book unglued. History Harvest is another example from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. At each harvest, community members are invited to bring and share letters, photographs, objects, stories, and participate in a conversation about the significance and meaning of their materials. Each artifact is then digitally captured by college students and shared in this free web-based archive for general education and use. In addition to those partners, DPLA is also a deep supporter of the open cultural community, which includes Open GLAM and GLAM Wiki initiatives, GLAM being galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. That the broad national organization, again, is always looking for ways to partner and expand that open content in order to be able to, again, connect the broadest range of users with material so that they know that they can use it in projects as openly and creatively as possible. One of the big things to come out of the Digital Public Library of America initiative in the past year and a half is writestatements.org. Together with partners in Europe and around the world, DPLA launched writestatements.org in an effort to help streamline and standardize copyright statements, thereby making it easier for users to learn how they can reuse content they find through DPLA and other digital libraries like it. For those of us who work in digital collections and digital libraries, I can say here at Florida State University, I think we discovered over 92 different right statements in our metadata, which is not useful at all as people find our material and want to know what can they do. Can it be, does it have an educational use? Can it be used freely? Is there no known copyright status? So writestatements.org is an attempt to define very specific content or copyright limitations and openness within the metadata so that it can be applied within our metadata and users can immediately know whether something's in copyright, out of copyright, or what the gray area is. When this can be matched with Creative Commons licensing, it empowers our users to know immediately how they might be able to use digitized content in projects, educational efforts, nonprofit, non-commercial creative endeavors, and then also what should we get commercial users, what the limitations there might be. So all things considered, the Digital Public Library of America is an ever-growing national network of libraries, archives, museums, cultural heritage institutions, and volunteers with local impact in our communities, strengthened by national and global reach. The development of DPLA over the course of the last 6 years, I think, has really had a fundamental impact on how digital libraries generally think about the connectedness of their content. It enables us to imagine opportunities even when we don't have programmers or developers within our home institutions. If content is available in DPLA, we can imagine opportunities for our users to search for material in different ways, to connect it with material we may not know is out there and connectable, and really enhance, I think, the learning process, educational opportunities, and creative opportunities for our users. It is in its 6 years or 5.5 years of existence, the DPLA is has grown immensely and is forever evolving, and it really is that network of institutional partners as well as volunteers and the staff that help make that possible. So what does that mean for us here in Florida? Well, here in Florida, we have a newly established service hub, the Sunshine State Digital Network. This network has been in development and planning for the last 3 years. We were accepted as a service hub late last fall, and have been in the process of establishing the technical infrastructure for that hub. Florida State University is the lead service hub in this project, with University of Miami and Florida International University at this point as initial partners in a hub structure. The broad concept for the Sunshine State Digital Network is that while Florida State University is the central service hub with the direct feed to the Digital Public Library of America, that our partners across the state, beginning with University of Miami and FIU in South Florida, but developing in the next year or so to some other regional partners, that we will have what we call sort of regional sub-hubs available across the state, so that institutions of all types and sizes will have partners in their area to work with on digital collection and digital library development, metadata standards, metadata remediation, and preparing material to feed into the larger system. We have multiple partners across the state. I believe that there were 13 institutions involved in the planning process. The State Library and the State Archives Florida Memory Project are integral partners in this process. We're working on harvesting Florida memory now. And we have several working groups that are under development. We have the core implementation team and the technical working group who've really been focused on trying to get that technical infrastructure for large-scale metadata harvesting and aggregation and correction streamlined, because if that pipeline doesn't work, then no other partners will benefit from this process. We'll also have a metadata group, an outreach group, a training group, and a higher level steering committee will be formed in the coming months to help guide the overall vision for the Sunshine State Digital Network. You are actually the first group to get a full explanation of the Sunshine State Digital Network. That's how new it is, and we're really looking forward to developing it. So through the Sunshine State Digital Network, institutions across the state of Florida, while we are beginning with state and private university collections, the intent of the Digital Public Library of America, as well as the Sunshine State Digital Network, is not simply to provide access to the largest collections or the best known digital library, digital collections in the state. It really fundamentally is to connect smaller organizations, perhaps even institutions who haven't done digitization yet, to help those organizations ramp up their efforts to be able to be connected into this broader national framework. So What have we been doing? As I mentioned, we've been setting up the initial technical infrastructure. We have had an initial set of metadata harvested by DPLA. The digital library, the Florida State Digital Library, the University of Miami Digital Library, and Florida International University Digital Library were a part of the first group. To give you a sense of process, once the technical infrastructure has been set up, the harvesting itself doesn't take much time, but the review of all of the metadata from all kinds of different types of systems with relatively, I mean, there are standards, but as we know from cataloging, even in metadata, the application of a standard of description can vary based on local practices. So streamlining that, reviewing metadata, and being sure that it maps correctly to the Digital Public Library of America metadata protocol. That process, that initial process of getting everything set up has taken about 5 months, and there's been a lot of back and forth between the service hubs and the technical group at the DPLA. I am very happy to announce that the state of Florida service hub, the Sunshine State Digital Network, we will be live in DPLA this fall. I'm hoping in the next several weeks. It's just a matter of where we are in the queue for the Digital Public Library of America. So sometime very soon, there will be a whole variety of more content initially available through the main national portal. And then our goal is to continue to add to that, to continue to bring more partners into this metadata aggregation so that we can connect more Florida organizations and digitized cultural heritage within this national framework. Some things that you'll hear about or be seeing more immediately. There'll be a series of informational and training workshops that'll be coming up. Our goal, there's 4 workshops. Dates should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. Our goal is to rotate or to have workshops in various points in the state with some funding to help support participation in those workshops. There'll be a call for volunteers to participate in the working groups that I've mentioned. There will also be a call for participation for our second group of organizations that will be aggregated into the flow. There'll be some statewide metadata standards that will be released that will help organizations work towards participation in aggregation. And I just see this as an opportunity across the state, whether or not you have content ready. I think it's a great opportunity to learn about and participate in different kinds of ways. In terms of content participation, contribution of metadata records, there's a process, as I mentioned earlier, all data in the Digital Public Library of America is freely available. So there's a permissions process where your organization would agree to contribute your metadata through a CC0 license. So this licenses the metadata, not the object itself, not your digital cultural heritage material, but the metadata for that material. It gives it an open license that allows that data to be used and reused in different kinds of ways. Having digital collections that are available in a publicly accessible site, and that site is in a system that is configured for metadata to be shared through an OAI PMH feed, an Open Archives Initiative protocol for metadata harvesting, I believe is what OAI PMH stands for. So this is not content that's simply on a website, but in a system that would allow for that metadata to be pulled and aggregated, harvested up through DPLA, and then allowing people again to kind of come back and find where that original materials have. Records need to have a unique title field, a valid rights statement. That rights statement, as I mentioned earlier, is probably one of the more complicated elements for some of us due to inconsistency over time. Having thumbnail images, being able to provide a link back to the original record on your local site, and ideally having a staff member who might be able to work with the Sunshine State Digital Network staff to help address any issues in sharing collection metadata with DPLA. And then the internal network in the state and our partners in the Sunshine State Digital Network, the goal is really to strengthen the ability of all organizations across the state of Florida to create, correct, enhance metadata within their digital libraries in a way that is workable for organizations of all types and sizes. And as we progress through the development of the Sunshine State Digital Network, it may be that we're able to develop even a broader service model where we may be able to provide more hands-on help with metadata remediation. I know there's a lot of interest in the state in developing service models that will allow for digitization of new new cultural heritage materials, as well as pursuit of opportunities in hosting services and others to again help those organizations who don't have a place to start in this process yet to participate. And if you're not ready for metadata harvest yet, if that entire list seems overwhelming and you and your organization just aren't there yet, that's no problem. Again, we'll be working to help colleagues and institutions across the state to develop this hubs-based model to provide localized support to help interested organizations develop digital collections and metadata that can eventually be shared in DPLA. I think no project, not even the national project, is ever truly complete. It is ever evolving, and I think the more we can do together across the state of Florida to help each other create digital collections and connect the world to that material is only a benefit to everyone. So, how do you get involved? This is a lot of information. You may all be itching to sort of jump in. I would say keep an eye out for Sunshine State Digital Network events, the workshop series that will be coming up. Watch for updates at the website. You are the first group to get the Sunshine State Digital Network.org URL. The website is currently under development. There's some new information that's being added over the next couple of weeks, but hold on to that URL and check back frequently. There'll be we're a little bit behind in picking dates and locations in part because we were just all shifted by Irma and some other beginning events. When the call goes out for the Sunshine State Digital Network working groups, it will go out to all organizations across the state. It'll be a broad-based effort. Keep an eye out if there's a working group that you would like to help out on. Please volunteer. You can also follow what's happening at the national level on the DPLA. There's email lists, there's news and updates, family history. There's a lot of discussion groups. I would encourage anyone, if you have the opportunity to attend a DPLA or DPLA affiliated event. DPLA Fest happens in April. It's always a good chance to see things that are happening. There's all kinds of workshops and webinars that the National DPLA put on for free that are all very useful. Have some fun. Create something with DPLA's open API. Get some students together. If you're a developer, join the community of developers. There is also yearly there's a call for Digital Public Library of community reps. I think currently in the state of Florida we have 5. Anybody is welcome to volunteer as a community rep. I was a community rep for 2 years prior to becoming involved in the planning process for the Sunshine State Digital Network. DPLA community reps do their best to integrate the tools and resources of DPLA and advocate for the use of the Digital Public Library of America within their communities, again, connecting students, users, community members with the power of a system like DPLA. So a lot of opportunities to be involved, even more coming, particularly here in the state of Florida. To date, there hasn't been a way for organizations in the state of Florida to get their material into the national portal, and that is now in a moment of significant change, and we're very excited about it. Some reason my logos didn't make it, but that's okay. So for forthcoming information on the Sunshine State Digital Network, keep an eye on that website. I've also included the URL for DPLA and some of their social media elements. I would be remiss too if I didn't give credit to the staff at DPLA for making some of the introductory slides I used available to share in presentations. It's a great open and public partnership. Thank you all for listening. I think we have a few minutes here if we have questions. That was a lot of information I just ran through really quickly. So I'm happy to, I've got my eye on the chat. If anybody has any questions or things they'd like me to explain more. Nancy asks, when will the documentation for metadata standards be available? Nancy, great question. The target date on that is October 2nd. We've got most of it set up. We're just formatting it in a way that will be readable. But so in the next probably week and a half, that should be up on the website. Any other questions? My contact information is there. Please feel free to send an email. We also just on Friday, Kayla Zayez Ruiz, who is our new Sunshine State Digital Network Coordinator, whose home is here at Florida State University. She started with us just on Friday, so she's 2 days on the job, and her contact information will also be available on the website as a point of contact for folks. Just keeping an eye again here on the chat. A lot of thanks. Well, you're so very welcome. I appreciate, again, everybody taking some time this morning to listen to the webinar. If you have any further questions or if anything comes up, please feel free to reach out. Aaron and Swiftlin will have the slides available on the website as he's just set. If you forget anything, you'll be able to go back to it. So thanks, everybody. Happy Monday. I hope everybody has a great week.
And thank you, Katie, for a wonderful webinar. Attendees, we encourage you to look at the upcoming webinars and workshops in months ahead and hope you're all able to join us for future training opportunities. I currently have the majority of our trainings for the 2017-2018 year currently on our website, and we will be adding Katie's upcoming trainings as we are scheduling them. So everyone, please have a wonderful week. I know it's Monday. Feels like a Friday sometimes. But have a wonderful week and keep an eye on your emails, checking our CE calendar on the website, the Swiftlin Facebook page, or look for your message from the Florida Library listserv. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.